FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and it is August 15th, 2017. Summer is coming to an abrupt end. It goes so fast. It really does. But one thing that's not going so fast is corporate earnings. Earnings have been down or flat since 2014, probably inflation adjusted. They're down a bit. And before I forget, email us at kl@kerrylutz.com. Danielle Park is with us now. Danielle, great to have you back on after a long hiatus.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Where did that month go?
I wish I knew, but I was moving for part of it. I was in Vancouver celebrating my birthday on the Cape. And you know what? Before I knew it, the month was well behind us. But the stock market keeps going up. Earnings are flat. What is wrong with this picture, Danielle?
Well, your S&P 500 in the U.S. has gone up, of course, year to date, but the Canadian stock market is actually negative year to date, Kerry. And the Russell 2000, for example, the small cap index is actually negative 5% since July. We're seeing quite a bit of weakness in a lot of areas. The Trump bump is turning into a slump as people realize the paralysis persists in Washington. No great miracle policy is going to turn this thing around. Not that I thought it was ever anyway, regardless of who got into that seat. The bankers are still running the show there and controlling everything. What we need is creative destruction and disruption of those dominant systems, which are, have been add, debt, and stir for 30 years, which painted us all into this corner of excess supply everywhere in the world, record levels of debt, stagnant wages, and as you say, stagnant S&P profits since 2014. S&P profits are down 5% from their peak in Q4 of 2014, while the S&P itself is up 34% since that time. So what that tells you is that this has been nothing about fundamental strength-driven market. This has been all about animal spirits, the expansion of the multiple that people have been willing to pay for these profits or the stagnant profits. And the irony is that it may look really sexy and great for a while, but when you pull back a little bit, you see that the Dow 150, for example, the 150, an equal weighted index of the 150 largest market cap stocks in the world, they retouched their 2007 high this month, Kerry. So yeah, exciting, but if we pull that back a bit, that's a decade of going nowhere. That's what happens when you get into record valuations in stocks, that you're paying forward for earnings that will be certain to disappoint. And once people realize that, they go down for the ride and they're back to where they started 10 years ago. Same thing with the Canadian stock market, actually. 2008 high, it hit again this month. So that's 9 years of going nowhere. And now, as I say, negative year to date. So you can run, but you can't hide from these manic overvaluation periods, and the evidence is just rife with the fact that exuberance spurred by QE has driven all the lemmings off the cliff once more. The percentage of IPOs with negative earnings per share numbers is eclipsing back to the 2000 levels today. We've got nearly 70% of all the initial public offerings brought to market in the past 3 years have had negative earnings per share. And that's the kind of manic stuff we saw at the tech bubble peak in 1999-2000.
That's madness. That is for certain madness. Hey, well, one thing that went up rather surprisingly was the Canadian dollar. It shot up about 10% against the U.S. dollar in a matter of days, seemingly coming out of nowhere. And what does it mean?
And been retracing since. I thought it was purely trade driven. Because our monetary policy had diverged from the U.S. for a while. Our Bank of Canada did increase rates out of concern for our debt bubble up here. And of course, the problem was that as our loonie appreciates in value, our one firing cylinder, the hope for exports, gets crimped. And so we have a lot of economic problems up here today based on the fact that our entire recovery the past 3 years has been driven by a debt bubble in housing. You know very well how that turns out, Carrie.
Oh, yes.
And we indeed have seen prices come off in some of the hottest areas. For example, I live within an hour perimeter of Toronto, and that's where we saw prices go up 40% year over year into 2017. In the last 3 months, or actually since about April, prices have come off again about 20%. So we're seeing these, this mindless buying begats mindless selling and over leverage and overconfidence, which creates all these, great economic distortions and problems. And we've seen this, we just see it everywhere we look, like in you guys, I was just looking at a chart in the US, you're back to consumer household debt levels, again, back to the peak that you saw in the 06-07 debacle. And what's been the culprit there? Of course, auto loans and student loans have really been the topper that has taken that level back up to these insane levels, even as wages have been flat. And so, that just means that the QE flow has really ignited this overproduction in things like, for example, automobiles. So you see that GM is sitting with record inventories again. Used car prices are crashing. Why? Because you've got a glut of off-lease supply coming. Cars coming off lease are at the highest they've been in since the last two cycle peaks. So we're moving into an economy where the consumer is out of necessity and finally out of ability, saying, hey, why are we buying all these things when we can rent to own so many, or just rent to use so many things?
Yeah.
Whether it's vacation rentals, whether it's autos, shared transportation, which I believe is the next big wave. People are waking up. They're saying, hey, these vehicles are a fortune and I drive them 4% of the time and the rest of the time they're sitting there rusting on their wheels. Why don't I use some of this shared transport, which is so much more cost effective for me? At the same time, you saw the co-founder of Home Depot today, I noticed, was saying, hey, I think Home Depot should start a leasing or rent to own program so that people can just, borrow things and then basically give them back instead of buying things which they don't have the money for.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, AirBNB, the largest innkeeper in the world, doesn't own one single unit of one hotel room, anything. I've used it many times where I just feel like I'm going someplace, I'm staying in, a chain hotel for $350 a night. It isn't worth it. And especially when there's no experiential value to me for where I stay. And at this point in life, you know what? Unless I go someplace really special, Danielle, I just don't really care that much. So being able to stay at an Airbnb, and pay, when I was in Vancouver, I paid $65 a night. I did stay in a hotel one night in Vancouver when I got there, and I think I bought it on Priceline. It was really ridiculously cheap. And then I went, when I went back, I stayed in Seattle for a day and found it on Priceline, a room at the W for $117 a night. So even when people go for the hotels, they're looking for the chains effectively to bid for their business. And when you talk about the shared economy there, it's going to hit the car companies an unbelievable way, and so many other sectors in the economy as well.
Well, it's hitting vacations, rentals, hotels. It's hitting the restaurant industry huge because there's a wave. I agree with you. And it's not a question of don't care where you stay. If you want to go on some of these rental sites, you can rent anything from the most opulent to the most basic exactly to suit your budget and group size. And what do you do when you have a whole house or a condo or apartment at your disposal? You tend to buy food and make it rather than eat out out at restaurants where you get, a lot more calories and salt and all the things people are sort of trying to avoid. But you're seeing this 17 consecutive month decline in U.S. restaurant sales, traffic. Partly that's, again, the credit pinch coming back because credit cards are full again. Wages have not kept up, as we've said many times. But I think there's also just a preference for, this whole blue apron. I always get the name wrong.
Yeah,
but
Blue Apron.
There's Chef's Table. There's so many different
They were a sponsor.
services now that let people make their own food, and grocery stores have made all these prefab packages now of like fresh food that people can just take home and make. And I think people are saying, hey, this is a lot cheaper than eating in a restaurant. We can do it exactly at our own time. We can have our own bottle of wine at home rather than paying outrageous costs for the liquor at the restaurant. And it's just how to do more with less. This is the theme, and I think it is extremely productive because it's what once you've hit the line of credit end, which many households have, you have to sort of figure out new ways to, pay down that debt and stop spending so much so that you're able to do that. And so all of these industries which have benefited from the credit bubble and from the reinflation from QE, the central bank money over the past 5-6 years, are now in a massive disruption phase. And, it's awesome for the households because this will make us leaner and smarter and come out of it more efficient. But what the stock market, for example, and the corporate debt market is priced off of is many of these large conglomerates which have these business models which are currently in the midst of a massive transition. And I think that's where, that is going to be one of the tipping points here where people realize they've extrapolated earnings for companies which are in a major downsize mode and that they can't keep banking on the consumer spending their brains out when they have no more credit left to use.
Absolutely. And that leads me to a thesis. We're approaching the end of branding or the limitations of branding, and a company named Harry's deals totally with that. People have given up brands, and for good reason. You pay so much for branded this, branded that. I've been using Harry's shave kit now for a week, and I can tell you this, I've never gotten a closer shave. From the shave gel lotion to the 5-blade razor, it's amazing. Feel my face right now. There's no stubble. There's no rough spots. It's just smooth. I've never gotten this close a shave before. And Harry's is so confident that you're going to love their blades. They'll give you their trial shave set for free when you sign up at harrys.com/survival, and you just pay a small fee for shipping. Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price. No wonder over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's. Jeff and Andy were two ordinary guys who were fed up with buying overpriced branded razors. So they started Harry's to fix shaving. They bought their own German factory with over 100 years of blade making experience to ensure the highest possible quality. All products are backed by a 100% quality assurance guarantee. Harry's offers their blades at half the price of the leading 5-blade razor, selling directly to you over the internet. Go over to harrys.com/survival now to claim your free trial offer from Harry's today. It's a $13 value for free when you sign up. Your free trial set includes a weighted ergonomic razor handle. It really is so balanced, so precise. 5 precision engineered blades with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel. It's worth it just for that. And a travel blade cover. All you have to do is go to harrys.com/survival right now. The only thing you have to lose is your rough shave. So, Danielle, on the theme of the end of branding or not being willing to pay for it or looking for substitute brands, we're really talking about that, right? I mean, that's what this really comes down to. These corporations spent the car companies 120 years building up their brands. And now we're getting to the point where nobody wants their brands. They're willing, because out of necessity or just frugality or intelligence, they're looking and saying, hey, we'll be able to borrow the car, Zip car. We can rent the Citibike. We can do all these things and, the brands be damned. And
actually, I don't know. I'm not sure that it's brands be damned. I think people care still about quality of things. And to the extent that, for example, a Mercedes or BMW is still perceived as a incredible quality, excellent safety, product, people will pick that if they can, borrow that or rent that or do shared autonomous or whatever. And I think that's why you're seeing all these main industries realize, like major car manufacturers, prodded by Musk and Tesla for sure, because none of them did it on their own. None of them saw the light at the end of that change. But now they're racing to catch up, and they're all announcing that they're going to transition their brand. So ideally, if you've got all these vehicles to choose from and they all have electric free, you don't have to put fuel in any of them to use them, you're going to still pick your preference. Like if they're all shared autonomous options and you can hire use an Uber app to hire yourself a Mercedes or a Porsche or whatever, they're all going to come pick you up. It makes no difference. I think brand will still matter in personal preference. It's just that they have been going down the wrong path for so many years of making these ICE engines, the whole focus about how loud the thing is. Nobody wants it to be loud. People want it to be clean, efficient, safe, look good. I think that it's just been kind of like a teenage mentality running these companies. And I think that the penny is finally dropping of necessity, but they've still sitting with massive inventories of the wrong product today. And that's where the difficulty is going to be.
Yeah, well, the transition's always difficult. But I would tell you that if you don't own the thing, if you're just going to be summoning it through an app, I mean, when was the last time you looked at a taxi cab and said, oh, well, that one's a better car, I'll take it? It's like you don't care because it's really, you have no interest in the product other than its effect, its status. Like you could care less if it's, they don't have convertible taxis, right? At least I haven't seen it. Maybe in Dubai they do. But, it's like, hey, I just need a ride. I want to get from point A to point B. So the concept of transportation and what it means, I think it's going to lose its effect as a status symbol. And I think that some of these brands have so leveraged their position, like the razor blade companies, without naming names, they've taken advantage of the consumer. Even though they do produce a perhaps superior product, it's enabled guys like Harry's to come in and unknown brands to come in. You see it with tobacco too. I mean, not the best example because that's an addictive product, but people are buying no name, no brand cigarettes because they feel like the brand has become an excuse or a means of exploitation. And that's what I think has happened. Like computers, a PC-based world, no one really cares what the label is on the computer. But if you're an Apple person, which I happen to be, but for practical reasons, because, it just works better for what I do for business here, then it matters. But otherwise, if you're not an Apple person, who cares if it says Dell, HP, Lenovo? Well, Lenovo might be infected with communist spyware, but they all are. So what's the difference there? We know that everything in your computer is susceptible to hacking and spying. But
I think it's more about the surgical nature with which consumption can now take place. Like I am an Amazon Prime user. Who wouldn't be? All you have to do is try that service a couple of times. You order it, it's free delivered to your door the next day. Why would you pry yourself away from something you're doing and go to a mall and wander about with your mouth open looking for something when you can do that kind of a surgical search, comparison, read reviews, strike down, done, right? And so this to me is a huge gift for specific consumption controlling costs, not being susceptible to impulse buying as much, but it's also going to help condense the massively overbuilt retail sector. Okay. But, again, the retail sector is in massive retreat, overbuilt on the credit bubble.
Well, one thing my kids told me about Amazon is if you buy a product there and a new model comes out within a year, you can return your old product and get the new one. with no penalty.
So what it does is it puts the buyer in the driver's seat, not the seller.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing that's happening, for example, in the car market. It's the same thing that's happening in the real estate market finally, where sellers have been demanding whatever they want and getting it. It's no longer the case.
All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up because Danielle's voice is giving out. But I wanted to talk, and we will talk about this next week, Danielle, about the guy that everybody loves to hate, who's probably the most disruptive person since Steve Jobs. I'm talking about Elon Musk. I want to spend most of the next show in 2 weeks talking about him, why he's so important. What he's done in space is nothing short of a miracle. Nobody ever reused a booster rocket until he came along, which is why space was so expensive. And then what he's done in vehicles and cars, literally getting rid of the model year, which is the holy grail of the auto company. Anyway, Danielle, we'll let you go, feel better, and we will talk to you in a couple weeks.
Okay, Carrie, thanks.